it wasn't the cop's fault, that I overdosed. And, allowed me to look at the whole picture situation a lot differently and, be grateful that I do have proof to look at something now.
Are you ready to celebrate?
Whoa.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the #Celebrate Columbus show. My name is Josh Burnett, and I gotta be honest with you, Columbus, this is gonna be my favorite interview of the year. The reason for that is when we started the show, the central focus was to celebrate people, businesses, and nonprofits that are doing awesome things in our community. And it's been a while since we've been able to have a person on the show to celebrate some amazing things that they're doing. And so that's why I'm really excited to introduce you, Columbus, to an awesome young lady in our community, Erika Hurt. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
And we're going to be talking about something that you've probably seen in the news, but we're going to get a little bit deeper and get to know her a little bit more because she's a special person in our community, and we want to continue to support her and her family and many other people in this community that have gone through what you've been through. And so we're going to be talking in depth a little bit more about her and her story. So let's get into the show. So Erika, tell us a little bit about you and your story.
Well, I grew up in Columbus, Indiana. I was born and raised here my whole life. I love Columbus. I was raised by both my mother and my father. They were married my whole life. They were amazing parents. They were very hard workers. My dad worked very long hours and instilled in me that, working will, make your way for life. They were great, loving parents. My father financially supported us completely, always. And my mother, she was so amazing, such a role model to me. She was so supportive and always, was by my side for everything. I did not grow up around drugs or anything like that. I was very sheltered from any kind of that life. I went to school, I made great grades. I had great friends. I was in softball and, I graduated high school and everything. I did, when I was 15 years old, start using pain pills. I was prescribed pain pills by my family doctor for a staph infection that I had contracted. So I began using those pain pills, and when the script was done, I continued to seek them out on the streets. I continued using pain pills. My tolerance started raising. So I started using more frequently, and I started using stronger pain pills. And it got to the point where, I had to have the pain pills or I was getting sick. Still through all of that, I was still going to school. I was still working. I got my first job when I was 15 years old as well. And I've held a job since then. So when I started using more frequently and I started finding myself sick if I didn't have the pills. My friend had actually had heroin, and she offered that to me when I was roughly 19 years old. So I used pain pills for about 4 years before I was introduced to heroin. So I, started using the heroin. I did not know that it was heroin for the first 2 weeks that I was using it. Because again, I was not raised around drugs.
Right.
And what I recall from, my DARE stuff that was in school, I recall them talking about marijuana and alcohol, not
Right.
really emphasizing heroin or meth or, the importance on those drugs. So I really didn't even know what heroin was. And, all I knew was that it was equivalent to pain pills. And so I continued using it. And that was kind of when, my addiction started progressing very badly. I started stealing to support my addiction. And I also, got hooked up with a very bad crowd. I had started dating a boy at the time who was using needles. And that was when I was introduced to needles. I was 21 years old when that happened. He was also using meth. So I started using meth as well with him. And that's when it got really, really bad. I started getting arrested quite often. I was in and out of jail for my 48 hours. And, that was also around the same time that I started to admit to myself that I had a problem. Because I remember a time, back when I was using the needle and I was unable to do it, and I had actually cried, because I was, longing to do it so badly.
Right.
So at that point I was, finally admitting to myself that I had a problem. And that was when my sobriety journey kind of began. I would try to get myself sober a few times, never really wanted, to stay sober. So, I always failed at that. And, I was in and out of jail for probably a year. It was just a vicious cycle. And I finally, got locked up the last time that I got arrested. I got locked up and I stayed in jail for 8 months. So that got me sober.
Right.
And as a condition of my charges, they released me after the 8 months and put me on house arrest.
Okay.
So when I was on house arrest, I continued to stay sober. I started going to meetings because I, thought that I was dead set and I wanted to be sober.
Right.
So, I was doing the bare minimum to get by. I was
Right.
just doing a little bit just to get myself by. And so I met another guy, and he was an alcoholic. And so I began noticing that I was in and out of that toxic relationship with him.
Right.
There was mental abuse, emotional abuse that came along with that. And all the while, since I was a little kid, I have always remember hiding my emotions, not feeling brave enough to actually tell people how I truly felt. So I would just stuff my emotions and hide them and make myself think that I was okay. So I suffered through that my whole life. And that also, played into my adult life as well. So, when I found myself in this toxic relationship, I didn't know how to reach out. I didn't know how to end it. I didn't know what to do or where to go from there. So, I just started stuffing my emotions, and they say that you mentally relapse before you physically pick up a drug and relapse. And I completely agree with that, because I do recall feeling miserable, feeling depressed, feeling like at times that I didn't even want to live, because I just didn't know how to remove myself from that situation.
Right.
So I began thinking, I could use again. I began thinking that my addiction wasn't as bad as what it seemed to be. And so my brain tricked me into it'd be okay to use just once. I can control it. I've been sober for so long, so I can control it again.
Right.
So I eventually relapsed again. Before that happened, though, I did get pregnant with my son. So I stayed sober through my whole pregnancy with my son.
Yeah.
So, that was a huge accomplishment.
Right.
I denied any drugs at the hospital when I gave birth to him just because of my history. And, I didn't want to jeopardize that or anything. So, that was a huge accomplishment to stay sober through my whole pregnancy for my son.
Yeah.
So it was about 2 months after I had my son when I finally relapsed. And my addiction, just picked up right where it left off the last time that I had got sober. I was jumped right back into stealing to support my addiction, going into the work late, leaving work early, doing whatever I had to do to get my drugs.
Right.
And I jumped immediately right back into the needle as well. So it always picks back up where it leaves off at. And so I used for I relapsed around February of 2016. And I used up until August of 2016, and I decided that I was going to go to rehab. It was still all for the wrong reasons, just because, I can't be getting high while trying to raise my son. I'm going to have to, do something with myself. I have to get myself back under control.
Right.
And I would still trick myself and tell myself that I could use again once I felt that I had it under control again. So, I decided to leave to go to rehab. So I left and I went to Florida for rehab, and I was there for 42 days. I came back home, and I was home for roughly 2 weeks. And the whole time that I was home, I had reservations to use. I was still miserable. I jumped right back into that toxic relationship with my son's father. And, just didn't know where to go from there. I felt miserable. I felt hopeless. And I, had purchased the heroin on the Friday before, and I decided, that I was going to hold on to it and try to talk myself out of it, because because I knew that I was making a bad decision. I wanted to use because I didn't want to be, depressed or feel miserable or anything like that. But at the same time, I wanted to try to find a different way to come out of that miserable state. But I was not reaching out to the public. I was not reaching out to my family or anybody to tell them, that I'm battling this, choice inside me. So I eventually relapsed again, and that was the day that I'd overdosed.
Wow. So take us back to that day, because, from what I've heard you say, and I'm sure people are hearing, as a little girl,
yes,
you had a great life.
Absolutely.
You didn't plan as a little kid to develop an addiction or dependence on any type of drug.
Nope.
But you found yourself in this situation of where, you're battling this addiction. You conquered it once and you were doing pretty well.
Yes.
And not that necessarily one thing brought you back, but you hadn't, decided, all right, this is for me. Mm-hmm. And so you're in a parking lot, and many people know about this because
yes,
there was a picture that came by. But take us through what really happened that day and led to kind of that blast of awareness of what happened.
Yes. So I don't really have much memory. I get asked this quite often of, what was going through my mind that day and what was I doing that day and what led me to that parking lot. I don't really have much memory, and I don't know if it's, just because I was, so depressed.
Yeah. And
I felt hopeless and I felt stuck. I didn't know where to go. I had stayed the night with my son's father the night before that, mm-hmm, and I was driving home, and I can just remember being so hopeless and like I, didn't even want to live. I just felt so, tired and exhausted. So I was driving home, and I knew that I had purchased the heroin the night before, and I knew that I had it on me, and I was still trying to talk myself out of it. And I was driving home. I barely even remember the drive home just because my mind was other places.
Right.
And my son was asleep in his car seat, and I kept thinking, I can use just this once and nobody will know. I can get away with it just this one time, and I won't do it anymore after this. So I finally gave myself permission to use. Mm-hmm. And the fact that my son was asleep in his car seat, and, a lot of addicts will justify it with
right,
their kids. And, no matter what age their kids are, they tell themselves that their kids are too young to truly know what's going on.
Right. Even
if they do know what's going on, they tell themselves just so they can justify it and give themselves permission to use. And that's exactly what I did for myself as well. And I've had, a lot of questions about my motive on choosing that parking lot. And as many people know, Hope is a really small town.
Right.
So, that just so happened to be the only place between my drive home and my house that, I was able to stop. I didn't want to do it at my house because I didn't want to be disrespectful to my parents. Mm-hmm. So, that's just where I chose to stop.
Yeah.
And, I remember pulling into the parking lot. But after that, I remember parking and everything. And then I lose all memory from that point on until I'm awake and getting into the ambulance. Mm-hmm.
And so many people, picking up from that story, know about a picture that went around on social media that, has been spread around about, a young mother overdosing in a parking lot. How did you first feel when you saw that picture on social media? The fact that it was you and your son was in the car and everyone had seen that. How did that make you feel?
Definitely humiliated. And it's so crazy when I think back about it now because I was so blameful. I wanted to blame the police for doing that to me. But now, I feel completely different about it now. But I can remember just being so shocked, and I don't know if anybody else is like me on this, but I'm one of those people who thinks I'm invincible.
Right.
And I think nothing's going to happen to me.
Right.
And that was actually my first overdose during my whole entire addiction.
Wow.
So, again, I'm thinking I'm never going to overdose. I have not overdosed in my whole addiction. I'm not going to overdose now. So when I seen that picture, it was hard for me to actually truly believe that was me in the picture. I was at a loss for words. I was shocked. I didn't know what to say. And still at that time, even viewing that picture at that moment, I still didn't think that I still told myself that I was going to be able to have it under control one day at that point. So, my brain was just playing huge tricks on me, and I was shocked, and, I was still trying to find a way to justify it and make my way out of it to eventually use again at some point. So it was very shocking and humiliating. I was hurt. I was angry. I was going through a lot of emotions that I didn't even really know that I was experiencing until later on.
And so we're talking, now about a year from that picture. But what happens after the picture? Kind of take us through that journey.
Yes. So I spent 2 months in jail, just waiting on, the judge to sentence me and everything. And I had my sentencing date, and they sentenced me to a rehab program. And I was sent to the rehab program. It's a lot of people don't know about it. It's an amazing program, and it's called the RAP program. It's at the jail, actually. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
And it's just for women only. And, so I was sent to that program. It's a 6-month-long inpatient rehab, and then you do 6 months of aftercare when you're done with the inpatient. When I was in that rehab, there's 7 days a week. They work extensively on underlying issues from childhood. They teach you how to deal with your emotions. They teach you how to express your emotions, to, tell the difference between what emotion you are truly even feeling. They just work on a lot of, emotional abuse, trauma, any kind of trauma they work on. And like I said, it's 7 days a week. So it was nonstop in that program all day long. So, I was there. I had contact visits with my son twice a week, so that was amazing. And there was a therapist on hand for us to use whenever we needed her. It was a very good program, and, they are very helpful. And I feel like, that program allowed me to take responsibility for my actions, allowed me to see, that it wasn't the cop's fault, that I overdosed. And, allowed me to look at the whole picture situation a lot differently, and, be grateful that I do have proof to look at something now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes.
It seems like, as I hear you talk, there's just so many things that you have gone through, and you're able to articulate it and understand, okay, this is what happened, this is what led, and, as you can look back and, hey, I'm not going to go back to that again.
Right.
And that's, thanks to you and obviously this program.
Right.
Which, could you say that one more time? What's the program called?
RAP. WRAP.
Awesome.
Yes.
Very cool. And Columbus, that's important for you to know that that's available in Bartholomew County for ladies in our community, correct?
Yes, and it's actually only available for ladies that have charges on their record, though. So, but there's a lot of ladies who do, so it's available to them. That's
awesome. That was really cool. Well, speaking of, some of the people who have helped you, who are some of those people in your life that you would like to celebrate that have helped you on your journey?
Yes. First and foremost, my mother, Jamie. She has, back when my addiction first started, and I think a lot of parents are enablers. So of course she enabled me. She wanted to turn a blind eye to it, because nobody wants to see their child going through any kind of emotional pain like that at all. But, she was able to seek out help, and she was able to see, what it is she needed to do to help me the best that she could. And through my whole entire addiction, 11 years of using, she has stuck by my side. She's gotten angry with me multiple times, and she's gotten very disappointed with me. But she has always stuck by my side. She has always let me know that she loves me, and she has always, been right there to help me with whatever I need. So, she is my number one supporter.
Who else are some of the other people in your life?
Yes, I have quite a few.
I bet.
My father was a huge supporter for me as well. He passed away, but he was a huge supporter for me. My mother's wife now, she has a wife, and she's a huge supporter of mine. She's there just as much as my mom is to help. She is the voice of reason for me, and she's, while my mom is the sweet side, she's the more strict side, and they mesh very well, and they offer me an awesome support team. I have a couple aunts, my Aunt Cindy and my Aunt Pam. They have been amazing help through everything, and my Uncle Ronnie. They have always came and visited me at all my visits. They've been there. They've expressed, any help that I need, they're willing to give it. My brother as well, my brother Tyler, he's an amazing support system to me as well. And, my son, there's not much he can do, but at the same time, there's a lot that he does for me. I would say the people from the RAP program, the facilitators and the therapists, they have played a huge role in my recovery. And they still do. They're very active in my life still at this point. I would say also people from AA support groups and Celebrate Recovery support groups. They are huge in my recovery. Jess Powell is a huge part of my recovery. And Judy McDaniel as well. She is part of Celebrate Recovery as well. So I have a lot of people in my life that are huge supporters for me and, huge team. And I also have people all over the world now that, are supporting me.
Yeah, there's been several interviews and we've been really just enjoyed watching your story, as heartbreaking as I'm sure it was for you and for many people in your life to watch the previous stories. This year's been really encouraging. Take me through why you decided to, after 1 year, to post that picture and talk about your story.
Yeah, I, decided to post the picture. I had achieved 2.5 years of sobriety back in 2014 to 2016. So I knew that I could be sober. I knew that I could do it. And when that viral picture last year came out of me and, there's people saying that I'm a junkie and I'll always be a junkie. I completely disagreed with that. I knew deep down that I could be sober and I knew deep down that I am a good person and I wanted people to see the true me. So when my 1 year of sobriety hit, I was so excited to show everybody that I did do it, I am doing it, and I'm going to continue doing it. So that was really amazing for me. And, that was really the only thing behind it was to show everybody my progress and show everybody, my mindset and, where I'm going.
That's awesome. So the question I think that I really want to know, and we talked about this a little bit off camera, is how are you doing today and how's your relationship with your son?
Yeah, so today I'm extremely busy still. I do 3 aftercare meetings per week, and those are in the mornings, and they're 2-hour meetings every time. And then I also do 2 to 3 self-help meetings per week on top of those other 3. I also work 48 to 64 hours a week at my job.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and then I do have, my son, who is a full-time job all on its own.
Yes, yeah.
And so I keep myself very busy. I keep myself very involved with the sober community. I keep myself involved with sober activities. And, I just surround myself with healthy, sober people. And my relationship with my son is amazing. During the RAP program when I was there, our relationship, there was a damper on it for sure.
Yeah.
And he didn't want much to do with me because I'd been taken away and, he hadn't spent much time with me through that. But when I came home from rehab, it was like I had never even left. Our relationship is amazing. We are connected at the hip, it seems like. He doesn't want to be away from me and I don't want to be away from him. So our relationship is amazing.
That's awesome. That is so cool. Well, question that some people have asked, and I let them know that we were going to be talking to you, and one of the questions was, how can we as a community support you and others who have struggled or are struggling with addiction? How can we help?
I think that, just being supportive and encouraging, because even through my positive sobriety post, and I know that, I did something very wrong a year ago. And, I made some very big mistakes with my child a year ago. But, I tried to turn this into a positive and make it a positive. And even through that, there's still some people sending hate messages and just being hateful. And, I don't think that that's good at all. So I think as a community, no matter what you think or how you feel about the situation, just sending your love and support and, being encouraging. And as a community, support groups are amazing and wonderful. Just reaching out and being encouraging and supportive and, keeping any hateful thoughts or words to yourself is definitely, very helpful to an addict.
Yeah. And, it seems like in Columbus especially, we've started to really focus on trying to help with this issue. I'm sure you might have heard, and we talked about this, there's a couple in the Heritage Fund. They are, they've already given $500,000 and they're going to be matching up to $1 million. What are your thoughts on that, and how can we best use dollars moving forward to help with people who are going through this problem?
I think that's an amazing thing. I think it's very encouraging to addicts, and I think that the best way to use the money would be, just to put together IOP classes or support groups, or even hold sober activities for people to, go out and have fun, so addicts know that you can have fun in sobriety.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, Columbus, if you guys want to contribute to that as well, I don't know the end date yet, but we're going to go ahead and put a link to where you can actually give directly to that program. I know that's something that Celebrate Columbus wants to be a part of, is raising as many funds as we can to, combat this issue, because there's so many awesome people like Erika and others that they never planned as a little girl or a little boy to be going through and be doing what they're doing maybe now or have been through. But I think it's our responsibility to see the best in them and to see that they're worth it, they're valuable, they matter, and they're a very important part of our community. So any way we can help, any way you can help, please click that link and give what you can to that. Well, Erika, before we get going, I want to ask you just one more question before we get going. In Columbus, we like to ask people, what they want to celebrate about Columbus, but I want to ask you a little bit a different rendition of that question. Over the past year, you've had quite a journey, and if you could celebrate one thing about this last year, what would you celebrate?
I would definitely celebrate being reunited with my son. It's been so amazing to be back home with him. I, cherish just the little things now because, I was taken away from him and I missed a lot of his milestones. So I don't take those things for granted now. And it's amazing to actually, spend quality time with him and be involved with him. So I would definitely enjoy celebrating that.
Awesome. Well, our hope is that one day that Erika can look back at this, her family, our community can look back at this interview and so many others that you're getting to do, and that it will be the one thing that people remember. Obviously, there was a picture that led to some really difficult moments, but moments like these are the ones that we want to look back and celebrate, because life is short.
Yes.
And each day counts, and we're so proud of you and all that you're
much.
doing. And Columbus, thank you so much for watching this special edition of the hashtag Celebrate Columbus. I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as we have, and I hope that you will share, because people need more good news like what Erika's doing in her life and so many others in our community. Thanks for watching this edition of the hashtag Celebrate Columbus show.